Hey everybody, welcome back to Harvesting Justice, bringing you the update about fetal organ harvesting and the unethical practice of aborted fetal tissue research. Now, on episode 11, coming to you December 1st, we want to give you an update about the San Francisco courts and how they connect to our educational efforts here, exposing UCSF and bringing transparency, accountability, oversight, and at the end, change. We want all of our medical institutions, medical research institutions to be operating at the highest level of ethics, and that is just not what's going on here. Aborted organ harvesting. This is always a heavy topic to be looking into, studying, and to be speaking about. But we know why we keep on doing it because without putting a spotlight on it, without getting a literal spotlight on the situation, there is never going to be change. There's never going to be justice. So let's turn that into a positive. There will be justice as long as we continue to talk about it, put more of other people's eyes on the situation, and bring about that accountability and just institutional shift. If this is your very first episode of Harvesting Justice, I would recommend you go back to episode one, or actually, even before that, our pilot episode filmed in March of 2022. That gives you all the basic building blocks to be able to understand everything else that we'll be covering in this edition of Harvesting Justice right here. And in this episode, we're going to be actually looking at an event that took place a couple weeks ago and how it relates to the same time period where we filmed our pilot in March of 2022. So, first off, an old colleague of ours, AJ Hurley, was in the courthouse at the Hall of Justice, downtown Bryant Street, South Market, um, on December, when was that? No, November 14th. Yeah, as of the release of this episode, that's about 2 weeks ago exactly. Oh, that was on the 17th. And we wanted to be able to sit there in the courtroom gallery to applaud and support pro life action, anything that is ethical and justified and, not out of line with typical, Bay Area, American public expression. It was a really interesting hearing because there was some good news and bad news. First off, you might want to know what this was all concerning. So, some of our colleagues decided to take certain protest actions upon themselves that got them in some legal hot water. Now, if you've already seen it before, you're probably kind of concerned, like raising an eyebrow, like it doesn't sound like anything that should raise any legal questions. Like we see these kinds of actions all the time. People, putting paint on statues. They're not thrown into a courtroom and threatened with 10 years of jail, standing in the lobby, speaking out and making their voice heard so their message is clear. You typically don't see people being threatened with years in prison for that either. And of course, postering around the house of a public official, that, I guess depending on whatever like extenuating circumstances, if there's not anything beyond that, no threats, nothing like that, it doesn't sound like something that should get someone in legal trouble, at least not on a felony level. So there were all of these concerns, accusations, these things that at bottom had no merit to them based on the actual people who took part. We were grateful to see some good news result by the end of the hearing. It's kind of a mixture of good news, bad news. But yeah, today's episode will be all about giving you the download on exactly what happened. Imagine just being familiar and up to date with the old Planned Parenthood controversy that was exposed by the Center for Medical Progress and David Daleiden. And then imagine hearing the news that something slightly similar was going on within San Francisco, that friends and colleagues of yours were posted up in the city, multiple organizations to continue to shine a spotlight on it. And then you join one of those organizations and continuing to learn details from Pro Life San Francisco, you decide to take that into the lobby of the abortion center to raise your voice in protest. That's what happened in March of 2022. As far as I know, this was never a planned event. I knew that there was going to be a Pink Rose Rescue, which is kind of, in a sense, a silent protest. It's meant to be an unseen protest as well, where a pro-lifer being perceived as someone considering abortion services, considering being a client, sits in the waiting room along with all of the other people and then strike up conversations with the people in the neighboring seat, encourage them to choose life, give them literature to encourage them that there are people and institutions that will be their support system, be their support network, and help them through their pregnancy and afterwards as well, to turn their eyes onto the needs of, like, onto the fact that their needs can be met and that their child has unique needs of their own. So, a Pink Rose Rescue, I don't know the mechanics of the situation. How I see it is the switch had to be impromptu, but their voices were definitely heard. AJ, Teresa, and Kristen. Kristen herself, while she wasn't dragged to court, same as AJ, she did receive some temporary restraining orders, so she wasn't able to do any outreach at the UCSF location at General Hospital. And within that restraining order, it was very interesting. It said that one of the abortion appointments was almost canceled. A baby's life was hanging in the balance. And if, before the sheriff's deputies, arrested AJ, Teresa, and Kristen, if they'd only allowed them to stay in the lobby there a bit longer for their Occupy style protest, if it was allowed to go on for any longer before they were, carted off by the police, that baby would still be alive, at least past that appointment. And hopefully there would have been a chance that would have turned into the chance for the mother to choose life, to know that there's people out there willing to speak up for her child. Is there's no knowing, there really is no knowing what message could be grasped from behind the doors, wherever those doors were. But at the very least, there was a clear message being shared with the staff there in the lobby of the abortion facility. Kristen can be seen on video walking slowly up to Eleanor Dry, the director of the abortion center, and setting a rose down on the work desk in front of her. Eleanor's back was kind of to everyone else. She said this in the courtroom during the hearing a couple weeks ago, that her back was to the protesters, that she wasn't aware of what was going on. What she didn't notice, what she didn't mention though 2 weeks ago at the hearing, was that someone did come alongside her, leave a rose just like inches from her hands at her computer station, and that person just turned around, walked away, just straight to the opposite side of the room. No incident, no fears coming true. It's really interesting how the thrust of her public testimony that she gave during the hearing, that was just worried about that what might the character of these people be? Who are they? What do I need to be worried about happening? And you get these people handing her a rose, raising their voice in protest. It's just really fascinating to be in a situation where 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 people in the situations they found themselves in, that they've come to a place where they're painted with a brush that just does not apply to them. Of course, I can sympathize with anybody having a fear of the unknown, but once these people become known, like the sheriff's deputies literally had them in their arms. They were brought to the holding cell inside General Hospital. They had zero weapons. Only weapons anywhere in the room were in the hands of the abortionists. When it comes to the fear of the unknown and those questions finally being answered, who these people were, what was their intention, what was even possible, and it all comes up zero danger, just a message, just flowers, literally. Like, I don't see why it makes sense that the message of fear was the leading message during the time of the statements that were made. And like to the point, people are free to say whatever's on their heart. The and she's a public figure, Eleanor Dry, the director of the abortion facility. It's strange. I don't know if anyone might take issue with me saying this, but in a really strange way, I kind of feel like I'm a kindred, like of kindred spirits with her. Hold on a second. Wait, I know that sounds ridiculous, but just the fact that the vast majority of the public does not spend hours every day just being delved into this topic of abortion. People volunteering or working full time in the pro life movement are, people working in the abortion movement are. And at least in that way alone, spending hours thinking and in the midst of this topic, it's something that we have in common. Like, maybe that's the better way to put it. And I don't know, just having a funny thought like that just helps me better, you know, um, center just everyone's humanity in my mind. Like the fact that, just to remind myself the fact that we're all human, we're very much the same, all of us on the planet in most ways. And we all, rightfully or wrongfully, have, our perceptions we make of other people. We come across, we journey through life, we have our fears, we have our worries. When it comes to the point where you know who the people are who are protesting against you, where there's no more mystery, why is the message of fear still the headline? I mean, that's the one thing that I do want to, you know, lay out there. I guess the only reason that I'm focused on this little, like, kind of niche topic is that the judge, Judge Brian Stack, who was overseeing the hearing, he had so much sympathy for Dr. Dry, but sympathy based on fears, based upon mystery, fear of the unknown. She referenced, you know, unjust, violent, anti abortion people in other places at other times in the past. And I'm not saying those have to be treated like, you know, they shouldn't weigh on anyone's mind. But knowing that the worst situation happened in your own abortion center, where people with empty hands, or with roses, if not empty hands, like, that's actually a really good, nice scenario to be in. And it's an opportunity, like, to consider what's driving such a peculiar action, driving such a peculiar move among people against my work. And I'm just hoping that despite, you know, not hearing any hints as to this being the case, I hope that there is some sort of, action of wheels turning in the minds of, the UCSF abortion facility staff. This is not something that people do over nothing. I'm not a seasoned podcast speaker, particularly on solo episodes. So I would definitely say that I'm worried I might be lingering too long on certain areas, rambling a bit. So let me just pull up something I wrote beforehand to get me kind of refocused on being a little bit more informational rather than reflective, philosophical. So originally, AJ was facing seven charges, seven accusations of criminal activity. Two of those charges were also at the level of felonies, so more serious crime, more serious time. And the DA's office, prior to this final hearing coming about, had reached a plea agreement with AJ and his defense team. Plea agreement has to do with making certain concessions and not making certain other concessions. So, for example, anyone accused of a crime, they have, the liberty to waive off a trial. If the state government is willing to make if the state government is willing to make a trade-off that, I waive my right to have a trial, have a, have the full process to exonerate myself, I will just accept probation and certain limitations of activities on into the future, certain things that they can't do, certain places they can't go. So, what was that issue? If what I was sharing earlier, if like the details are a little bit too scattered and sparse and not like crystal clear, this is the part of the episode where I will make it clear like what went down. So there were three things at issue that led to the criminal charges, and then the hearing where the no contest plea deal agreement was made, um, reducing everything down to two misdemeanors and time served 4 days in jail. So, what was that issue? One, a creative protest involving the mother and child statue just yards away from the documented site of UCSF's 6-month elective abortions. Two, postering protest flyers around the neighborhood of the director of the abortion center after learning of the address from a white pages listing. And three, an Occupy style lobby protest in the abortion center itself. So, the mother and child statue. You've probably seen the video on our YouTube page. It's a clip from Cron 4 local news here in San Francisco, Bay Area, that covered that protest actually. To put the pro life message in an eye grabbing visual form, the mother figure in the statue, and I'll show you an image of what the statue looks like every other day. Here we go. The mother figure in the statue was given an Eleanor name tag right across the top. And this is like a political cartoon, right? Like you can kind of hear the kind of parallels here. So, Eleanor, and what is Eleanor doing? The child figure, the baby figure in this of the statue, in the arms of the mother figure, the baby was covered in red paint and red yarn to represent the innards spilling out. And it was really interesting that in the court documents in Eleanor's statement as well, Dr. Dry's statement. It was never specified that the blood was on the baby and not the mother. They just said the mother and baby statue covered in blood, as if it's some sort of veiled threat to providers. It's showing what the providers are doing, what they're paid to do to attack the babies that should be carried peacefully in their arms instead. So this visual protest was given a vandalism charge. Like any protester who is trying to decry violence through a creative visual protest to make an eye-grabbing representation of what they're trying to get the community to be against, for them to be weighed down with criminal court proceedings, I think is ridiculous. And I think we see every other year, a statue being torn down, paint being put on Columbus time and time again. Like, are these other protesters being treated the same way? I can't say one way or the other. I have, my, inclinations to, a guess. When it came to postering protest flyers, people have a right to protest public figures. And Eleanor Dry, while the term public official isn't correct, she's a public figure, a government employee, someone who's on multiple public stages at open free forums in San Francisco. It Anybody should be willing to face criticism and give an answer without, needing to bring their ideological opponents into any courtroom. Just be able to bring to the public their perspective and opposing voice. Oh, I just remembered, it was that postering in the neighborhood thing. The only reason that led to an additional like charge is because there was the assumption that stalking led to the discovery of the neighborhood, but I know firsthand that it was from a white pages search. And I won't go into any details, but that was, I know that was shown to Age's lawyers to be publicly available information. So the stalking assumption was just a speculation. Otherwise, I don't think the posters would have led to any charges if there wasn't that speculation. And to bring it back to that third point, the third action, the Occupy style protest, the California FACE Act was brought up regarding that. So I'm pretty sure everyone can acknowledge that it's a fact that a lobby protest, I'm kind of struggling with kind of letting certain assumptions of my own rule the day, and whether or not it's fair for me to put these inclinations of thought into kind of center focus, of my own center of focus, and to present them to anyone else. But yeah, maybe I can just couch it that way, that I'm not sure if this is the right way to view it or not, but I'm wondering if this is the case, that when it comes to an Occupy style protest at an abortion center in a lobby where the people, are allowing people to walk around them, aren't raising their hands, not making any threatening movements, if the people who choose to do that within an abortion center lobby, who are then arrested and then threatened with years in prison, if that is the abortion businesses getting special treatment. Of course, the California FACE Act exists. There could be some kind of calculus, some interpretation made to try to state that placement of persons is equivalent to blocking, maybe. But our protests at financial institutions or chiropractor institutions, if there was going to be a place that had a lot of, client mistreatment. If those people physically placing their bodies in the place that inconvenienced a business, um, if they would receive the same exact equivalent, charges in a courtroom. Yeah, I guess this comes with just having the perspective that the FACE Act at its basis is unjust, and that the same kind of trespassing laws should apply everywhere, regardless of what type of institution it is. No one should have to fear extra punishment just because the place is the place you're protesting is more worthy of not having protesters. Like that's I guess the way that we would speak to, to what the FACE Act is. Here's something that I wrote a little while ago. Occupying areas and wheat pasting, a special method for postering that's very common in urban centers. Occupying areas and wheat pasting to protest violence is not unheard of. In fact, it is widely celebrated. But we live in an era where abortion businesses often get special treatment. But waking the people up has to start somewhere. And we at Pro Life San Francisco are proud to educate people using publicly accessible information that's available at our fingertips. By waking the people up, we were giving them the chance to to take a stand, to talk with and to influence government officials, institutions, and we just need to be able to reach the people who are able to make the direct changes, or if they're resistant to change, to influence the people above them, to the people with the authority, the judges, legislators, executive legislators, like the only people in existence who have the authority to punish the people doing the unethical activity. If we can influence them, then that's the way that change will happen. The best thing would be to be able to transform the hearts of the people doing those actions themselves. And that's what a lobby protest can do. It's just very clear to me that one, an informed movement is a passionate movement. An informed movement is a powerful movement. And when people take their knowledge, turn it into action for good, to not redirect violence, but to stop violence, to grind it to a halt, that is that's the fruit of a movement that is trying to make an impact. The victims in the situation were the babies behind closed doors in their mothers in their mothers' wombs. So in short, when it comes to convictions being levied by the government against principled activists, we cannot say that we're happy with the outcome, but it did go so much better than it would have gone. I kind of covered the plea deal agreement. It's an agreement between the state representing the people of California. So the people of California versus AJ Hurley, the DA's office, and the lawyers came to the shared understanding. So what was originally 7 charges, including 2 felonies, became just 2 misdemeanors. AJ was sentenced to 1 year probation, a stay away order, so he's unable to return to General Hospital for any outreach of any kind, protests of any kind, anything for any kind. Um, yeah, just can't be in that physical area, unfortunately. And um, 4 days in jail, time already served. It was disappointing in my sight to hear the bias in the voice of the judge. So the first thing, of course, he didn't allow for a comprehensive understanding of what went on, only going off of really speculation, a limited scope, a limited view, and really can't say a limited view of the situation because, as I said, it all comes back to the view, to the inner thoughts of the facility director, the fear of the unknown. The speculation was what ruled the show, and the judge, his emotion was definitely centered on that. And when AJ was allowed the chance to read a prepared statement of his own, he wasn't allowed to get past the middle point of it. He was able to share with the court and with Eleanor Dry that he had no intention to create fear. And then when he wanted to go deeper into the fact that children are victimized, that we never want to see anyone fall victim to anybody, and case in point, the babies being victimized by abortion deserve protection and consideration as well. Once AJ got up toward that point, the DA official spoke up in objection, and the judge would just like brought everything to a pause and said, "Let's just move on to the next thing." And AJ was, yeah, I'm laughing because it's uncomfortable. He just was not allowed to read the rest of his statement, which would have been amazing. It would have been great to be able to share that in the same room with Dr. Dry. Give her the chance to be as considerate as we all need to be to each other. Another example of bias in the courtroom, I don't know if bias is the best word, just bringing up that, always reflective Robert back into, into the center focus. Bias is like the closest word I could think of to how to characterize this. Well, basically, what happened was that at one point before, I think this was just moments before Eleanor Dry was instructed to give her statement in the courtroom to the judge to put on record, the DA said that he was requesting that the number of pro life people watching in the courtroom gallery in the public seats should be limited, and wanted the judge to send people out into the hallway. And the judge, like, to his credit, the judge said, based on what authority? Like, he was dumbfounded himself. So, um, I'm glad that happened. I'm glad that the judge said what he did and refused that request from the DA's office. I'm glad that happened. Not happy that the DA tried to do that, because who are we hurting? Again, that's the message here, the central message. Who are we hurting? We don't find it right to hurt anyone, and the abortion facilities shouldn't find it within their rights to hurt anyone either. We're just members of the public, pro-life members of the public, giving visual support to the defendant, to principled activism. And if our mere presence in the courtroom makes anyone else in the courtroom uncomfortable, anyone of a specific profession or frame of mind, of a certain stance, it's nothing that we're doing. Once the hearing was over, once we were back out all in the hallway after everything was said and done, the two misdemeanors secured and accepted by the judge. The effort goes on. The goal of the pro life movement is to transform our society into one that never excuses maiming or killing anyone. And we hope to help the justice system come on board to the point where it will hold institutions like UCSF accountable for their poor actions. And that's the end of the episode. It's very clear this is an ever somber topic. We can't expect to be able to solve it by the end of every episode. Like, there's never going to be enough reflection to be able to like happen upon, oh, here's like the magic formula, the secret magical formula to being able to bring everyone onto the same page. But the thing that does get us toward that, to everyone landing on the same page, being in agreement, it's going to take a lot of conversation, a lot more sharing of messages in all types of forums, in all types of formats. Let's all amplify our voices and all keep our ears open. Like a debate is not a monologue, you've got to listen. When two people who are in some ways very similar, but in other ways very different, want to come into more agreement, stronger unity on what it means to afford people their right to safety and their right to life, it takes hearing some hard messages. It takes sharing some hard truths, but we need to continue to be able to talk to each other, share messages, write if in person or vocal conversation is a little bit difficult when it comes to tense subjects like fetal organ harvesting and abortion. And when we do that, the world has the possibility to change. We have, as you've probably seen in our last episode, launched our action page, ethicalresearchnow.org. .org or .com will work, so feel free to share that with everyone you know.